Part 1: The Men by the Fence. The wind was colder than it should have been for an autumn afternoon. I stood beside my wife Eleanor's grave longer than I planned. The cemetery had already emptied. Even the groundskeeper had locked the gates on the far side. Only the sound of leaves scraping across the stone paths remained. I brushed my fingers across her name carved into the marble. Eleanor Hayes. 1949 to 2024. I'm trying, Ellie. I whispered. I just don't know what I'm supposed to do without you. For 43 years, I never made a single important decision alone. She handled the small details of life, bills, birthdays, remembering when to call our son Daniel. I handled work, repairs, and pretending everything was under control. Now the house was silent. Daniel hadn't visited in 2 weeks. He said he was busy. His wife, Karen, didn't come to the funeral at all. I stayed another minute, then another, until the cold began to creep into my bones. Finally I turned and walked back to my truck, feeling heavier than when I arrived. The sun had already dipped behind the trees by the time I reached home. My house sat at the end of Maple Street. The same house Eleanor and I bought when Daniel was 5 years old. The porch light was off, strange, because I always left it on after sunset. But that wasn't what stopped me. Someone was standing near the wooden fence separating my yard from the neighbors. A tall figure. Waiting. As I got closer, I recognized him. Mr. Callahan. He'd lived next door for nearly 10 years. Quiet man. Retired electrician. We rarely talked beyond polite waves and weather comments. Yet tonight, he wasn't going inside. He was watching my driveway. The moment I stepped out of the truck, he walked toward me quickly, almost urgently. "Frank," he said, voice low. "I'm glad you're home." Something in his tone tightened my chest. "You all right?" I asked. "You look nervous." He glanced behind him toward my house. Not casually. Carefully. Then he stepped closer so no one else could hear. "I didn't know how to tell you this," he said. "I almost called the police. But I thought you should hear it first." My stomach dropped. "Tell me what?" He hesitated, and I noticed his hands were shaking. "About an hour after you left for the cemetery," he said, "someone came to your house." I frowned. "Daniel." He slowly shook his head. "No." He swallowed. "It was your son's wife. And she wasn't alone." A cold wave ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" Mr. Callahan leaned closer and whispered. "They had keys, Frank. And they went inside like they owned the place." I felt the world tilt slightly beneath my feet. Karen, in my house. I hadn't given her a key. Then he said the words that made my heart start pounding. "And what I heard them say through your open kitchen window. You're not going to like it." To be continued in part 2. Something inside Frank's house has already been moved. Part 2: The Open Door. For a moment I just stared at Mr. Callahan, hoping I'd misunderstood him. "That's impossible," I said quietly. "Karen doesn't even come here. She barely tolerated visiting Eleanor when she was alive." He shook his head. "I'm telling you what I saw." My hands suddenly felt numb. I walked toward my front porch faster than I intended, Mr. Callahan following behind me. And then I noticed it. The porch light was on. I knew I had left it off when I went to the cemetery. My chest tightened. I stepped onto the porch. The air smelled faintly of cigarette smoke, not mine. Not Eleanor's. Neither of us had ever smoked. My fingers hovered over the doorknob. It was unlocked. I always locked it. Slowly. I pushed the door open. The house was dark except for the kitchen light at the back. A faint humming sound came from inside, like a refrigerator door left open. "Hello," I called. No answer. I stepped in. The living room looked wrong. Not destroyed. Not robbed. Just disturbed. The framed photos Eleanor carefully arranged along the bookshelf had been moved. One lay face down on the coffee table. The sofa cushions were out of place. A cabinet door was slightly open. Mr. Callahan whispered behind me. They were here about 20 minutes. I walked toward the kitchen. Halfway there, I stopped. Eleanor's jewelry drawer. It was open. I hadn't touched it since the day she passed. I couldn't bring myself to. Now it was pulled out completely. Empty velvet slots stared back at me. My breathing became shallow. "No," I murmured. I rushed into the bedroom. Closet doors open. Her coats shifted. And on the bed, a shoebox I had hidden under the dresser sat exposed. My heart slammed. I opened it immediately. Inside were documents Eleanor had told me never to throw away, old bank letters, property paperwork, and one sealed envelope she'd written just weeks before she died. The envelope was opened. Someone had read it. My hands trembled as I turned it over. The seal was clearly broken, not by me. "Frank," Mr. Callahan said carefully. "There's something else." I slowly turned. "What?" "I couldn't hear everything," he said, "but through the window. Your daughter-in-law said something very clear." My throat felt dry. "What did she say?" He hesitated. Then spoke softly. "She said, good. The old man still doesn't know about the second will." Everything inside me went silent. "Second will," I repeated. Mr. Callahan nodded grimly. And the men with her replied, "We have to move fast before he finds out what she left him." My knees almost gave out. Eleanor never told me about another will. But suddenly I remembered. 3 days before she died, she asked me one strange question. "Frank, if something happens to me, promise you won't trust Daniel blindly." I thought it was fear talking. Now, I wasn't so sure. Just then, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered slowly. A calm, unfamiliar voice spoke. "Mr. Hayes. This is Margaret Holloway. I was your wife's attorney." My heart stopped. "I've been trying to reach you all day," she said. "There's something extremely important you need to know about Eleanor's estate. And you may already be in danger." To be continued in Part 3. The lawyer reveals why someone is searching the house. Part 3, the second will. My grip tightened around the phone. "In danger?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "What do you mean in danger?" The woman on the other end, Margaret Holloway, didn't hesitate. "Mr. Hayes, where are you right now?" "In my house." There was a pause. Then her tone changed immediately. "Are you alone?" I glanced at Mr. Callahan. "My neighbor is with me." "Good," she said. "Do not leave him. And listen carefully, did anyone enter your house today?" I looked at the open drawers, the moved photos, the empty jewelry case. "Yes." Another pause. "I was afraid of that." My heart started pounding again. "What is going on, Miss Holloway?" "What second will?" My neighbor heard someone mention it. She exhaled slowly. "Your wife came to me 2 weeks before she passed away. She was worried about something. Specifically about your son Daniel and his wife Karen." I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. She believed they were planning to take control of your home and her assets immediately after her death. That's insane, I whispered, but deep down, I already knew it wasn't. She didn't think so, Margaret replied. That's why she changed her will. My chest tightened. Changed it how? Originally, everything, the house, savings, and her business shares, were to be divided equally between you and Daniel. But after what she discovered, she altered the legal structure. I sat down slowly. What did she do? She placed everything into a protected trust. In your name only. The room went silent. Daniel gets nothing, I asked. Not unless you decide he does. My mind reeled. Why would she hide that from me? Margaret's voice softened. Because she believed someone close to you was already manipulating Daniel. She thought if they knew you were the sole beneficiary, they might try to pressure you, or worse. My eyes drifted toward the broken seal on Eleanor's envelope. They already know, I whispered. What? They broke into the house. They opened her letter. The lawyer inhaled sharply. Then we have a serious problem. My heart hammered. What kind of problem? The trust documents are not kept at my office, she said. Your wife insisted they remain somewhere only you could access. I've never seen them, I said. I know, Margaret replied. She told me you wouldn't understand at first. She said, Frank will figure it out when he reads my real message. I froze. Real message? Yes, Margaret said carefully. The letter she left in the shoebox wasn't the important one. That was only a distraction. My pulse raced. Then where is the real one? Her next words made my hands go cold. It's hidden somewhere inside your house. I slowly looked around the living room, the photos, the furniture. The walls Eleanor decorated herself. She said you'd recognize the clue immediately, Margaret continued. Something only the two of you shared. I swallowed. Then suddenly, I remembered. Not the jewelry. Not the bedroom. The clock. Eleanor's antique wall clock in the study, the one she never let anyone touch. I walked quickly down the hallway toward the study. Mr. Callahan followed. The clock ticked loudly in the quiet house. I stared at it and noticed something I had never seen before. The time was wrong. Not stopped. Set to 11:17. Eleanor's birthday. My hands trembled as I reached behind the clock. My fingers hit something taped inside. An envelope. I pulled it free. Across the front, in Eleanor's handwriting. For Frank only. Do not let Daniel or Karen read this. My chest tightened. I opened it. Inside were legal documents. And a single photograph. I stared at the picture, and my blood ran cold. It showed Daniel and Karen meeting a man I didn't recognize. And beneath the photo, Eleanor had written, "This is the man convincing them to remove you from the house." Just then, the front door handle rattled. Someone was trying to get in. Mr. Callahan whispered urgently, "Frank, they're back." To be continued in Part 4. Frank confronts the people trying to take his home. Part 4, the door opens. The front door handle shook harder. Whoever was outside wasn't knocking anymore. They were trying to unlock it. My heart started pounding so loudly. I could hear it in my ears. Mr. Callahan quickly pulled the curtains shut and whispered, "Don't make a sound." The metal lock clicked once. Then again. I froze. "Frank," he muttered quietly, "do you have a back exit?" "Yes, kitchen door." "Good." But we're not running yet, he said, gripping my arm. We need to know who this is. I held Eleanor's envelope tightly against my chest. My hands were shaking, but something else was rising inside me too, anger. Not fear anymore. After 42 years in that home, I wasn't sneaking out like a trespasser. The lock suddenly stopped moving. Silence. For 3 long seconds. Then, a knock. Not polite. Slow. Confident. 3 hard taps. I stepped toward the hallway despite Mr. Callahan trying to stop me. Frank, wait. But I already knew. Only one person knocked like that. I opened the door. Daniel stood there. My son looked surprised for half a second, then his face tightened. Dad. Behind him stood Karen. And a tall man in a dark coat. The same man from the photograph. My stomach dropped. Karen forced a smile. We were worried about you. You didn't answer your phone. I stared at them. You have a key. Daniel hesitated. Well, yeah. I still live here too. No, I said calmly. You don't. Karen's expression hardened. We came to talk, she said. And also to pick up Mom's paperwork. My hand tightened around the envelope. What paperwork? Karen glanced at the stranger beside her before answering. The house documents. The man finally spoke, his voice smooth and cold. Mr. Hayes. I'm Gregory Pike. I'm here to help your family transition ownership smoothly. Ownership. The word hit me like ice water. I looked directly at Daniel. You told someone you own this house. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Dad, it's complicated. No, I said quietly. It isn't. Karen stepped forward. Frank, let's not do this emotionally. You're older now. Managing a property, taxes, insurance. It's a lot. We're just trying to help you. You can move somewhere comfortable. Assisted living is. Stop. My voice echoed in the doorway. Her smile disappeared. You broke into my house, I said slowly. You opened Eleanor's letter. Daniel looked at Karen immediately. You said you didn't open anything. Karen snapped back, I didn't know he'd notice. The stranger, Gregory Pike, intervened smoothly. Let's stay calm. Legally speaking, your son has inheritance rights. No. I held up the documents from the envelope. Legally speaking. He doesn't. All 3 froze. Karen's eyes narrowed. What is that? My wife changed the will. Daniel's face went pale. You're lying. I pulled out the trust papers and handed them to him. He read the first line. And his hands started shaking. Protected trust. Sole beneficiary. He looked up at me, stunned. You. Karen grabbed the pages and read them herself. Her face lost all color. That's impossible, she whispered. Gregory Pike reached for the papers, but I pulled them back. My wife knew, I said quietly. She knew someone was convincing you to push me out. I looked straight at Gregory. You. For the first time, the man looked uncomfortable. Daniel turned toward him slowly. You said the house was already half mine. Gregory said nothing. Karen whispered, you told us his signature would transfer it. Silence. Daniel's eyes widened. You were going to trick me too. Gregory stepped back toward the driveway. I think I should leave. Mr. Callahan suddenly spoke from behind me. No, he said firmly. We all turned. He was holding his phone. I already called the police. Karen gasped. Daniel stepped away from Gregory like he'd just realized something horrible. My chest hurt, not from anger anymore. From heartbreak. I looked at my son. You didn't trust me. But you trusted a stranger enough to throw me out of my own home. Daniel's voice cracked. Dad. I thought you were hiding money from me. I shook my head slowly. I was protecting your mother's last wish. Sirens sounded in the distance. Gregory Pike ran. But it was too late. To be continued in Part 5. The truth about the stranger. And why Eleanor was afraid. Is finally revealed. Part 5. The truth about Gregory Pike. The police arrived within minutes. 2 patrol cars pulled up, red and blue lights washing across the front of my house. Gregory Pike barely made it halfway down the sidewalk before an officer stopped him. Sir, stay where you are. Karen's confidence disappeared instantly. Daniel stood frozen beside the porch steps, still holding the trust papers like he didn't fully understand what he'd just read. One officer approached me. Mr. Hayes. We received a call about an attempted unlawful entry. Mr. Callahan stepped forward. I saw them earlier today inside his house while he was gone. They had keys. The officer nodded and turned to Gregory. Where did you get access to this property? Gregory tried to remain calm. I'm a financial consultant. The family requested assistance with estate transfer. The officer looked unimpressed. Then you won't mind explaining the forged documents we found in your briefcase. Karen's head snapped toward him. Forged, what? Another officer opened a leather folder they had taken from Gregory's car. Inside were multiple prepared deeds and ownership transfer forms, already signed. Signed with my name. My stomach turned. Daniel stared at them in horror. You said those were standard papers. He whispered. Gregory said nothing. The officer spoke flatly. These signatures were copied. Poorly. Karen stepped back as if the ground shifted beneath her. You told us this was legal, she said quietly. Gregory finally spoke, but his confidence was gone. You wanted the house. I showed you how to secure it. Daniel shook his head. No, you told us Dad planned to cut us out. You said Mom changed the will secretly and he was hiding everything. I felt a sharp ache in my chest. He had believed a stranger over his own parents. The officer turned to me. Mr. Hayes, your wife contacted our department 3 weeks before she passed. My heart stopped. She filed a precautionary report. She suspected someone was targeting your property through your son and daughter-in-law. I swallowed. She knew about him. The officer nodded toward Gregory. Yes. He's been under investigation for elder property fraud in 2 counties. He befriends families after a death, convinces relatives they're being cheated, then uses forged transfers to steal homes. Karen covered her mouth. Daniel looked sick. So, he used us, Daniel whispered. I answered softly. No, he used your doubt. Gregory was handcuffed. As they led him toward the patrol car, he glanced back at Daniel. You came to me first, he said coldly. You wanted the house. Daniel didn't respond. Because he couldn't. The police drove away with Gregory. Silence fell over the yard. Karen stood near the driveway, trembling. Daniel still held the documents. He slowly walked toward me. Dad, his voice broke. Mom knew all of this. I nodded. She tried to protect both of us. His eyes filled with tears. I thought you didn't trust me, he whispered. I trusted you, I said quietly. She was afraid someone else would make you stop trusting yourself. Karen finally spoke, barely audible. We never meant to hurt you. I looked at her gently but firmly. You didn't mean to. But you almost erased me from my own life. Daniel stepped forward, shaking. I chose money over you. And almost lost everything. I could see it clearly now, not greed. Fear. He had been afraid of being left with nothing. And someone had used that fear. I placed Eleanor's letter in his hands. Your mother didn't change the will to punish you, I said. He read the final line she wrote. Our son is a good man. Just not when he is afraid. Daniel broke down crying. For the first time since Eleanor died, I felt she was still guiding our family. But the hardest decision still remained. Because forgiveness wasn't automatic. To be continued in final part 6. Frank must decide whether to let his son back into his life. And Eleanor left one last message to help him choose. Part 6, final part, her last message. The police cars were gone. The street was quiet again. Just like every evening Eleanor and I had spent sitting on the porch together. But now Daniel stood in the yard, staring at the ground like a boy who had lost his way home. Karen waited near the driveway, unsure whether she should leave or stay. Daniel still held the letter in his shaking hands. Dad, he said softly, unable to meet my eyes. I don't know how to fix this. For a moment, I didn't answer. I looked around the yard, the tree I planted the year he was born. The porch swing Eleanor loved. The house we built our life inside. This wasn't just property. It was memory. And he had almost taken it from me. I can't pretend nothing happened, I said quietly. He nodded immediately. I know. I don't deserve that. His voice cracked. I believed a stranger over my own parents. Because I was scared. I kept thinking if you had money saved, you were hiding it from me. I thought you didn't trust me anymore. I sighed. I never hid anything from you, I said. Your mother and I were saving so you'd never have to struggle like we did. He finally looked at me, tears in his eyes. I would give all of it back if I could undo this. I shook my head gently. This was never about the house. I stepped aside and motioned toward the porch. Come sit. He hesitated, almost like he didn't believe he was still welcome. Then slowly, he walked up the steps. Karen remained behind. After a moment, she quietly turned and left. Understanding this was something only father and son could face. We sat in silence for a long minute. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out another small envelope. The one hidden behind Eleanor's clock. There's one more thing, I said. He opened it carefully. Inside was a final note in Eleanor's handwriting. He read aloud, his voice trembling. Frank, if Daniel is standing beside you when you read this, forgive him. He stopped. Tears fell onto the paper. I continued softly. She wrote more. He kept reading. He is not weak. He is afraid. And fear makes people listen to the wrong voices. Our job as parents was never to be obeyed. It was to be there when he finally understood. Daniel couldn't hold back anymore. He covered his face and cried, not quietly, not pridefully. I'm so sorry, Dad, he whispered. I failed both of you. I placed my hand on his shoulder. No, I said gently. You made a mistake. Failing would have been never coming back. He looked at me, unsure. Then, you're not cutting me out? I shook my head. Your mother protected this house so we wouldn't lose each other over it. I paused. But trust takes time to rebuild. He nodded immediately. I'll earn it. However long it takes. Weeks passed. Daniel began coming every Sunday morning. No paperwork, No discussions about inheritance. Just coffee on the porch. Just conversations we should have never stopped having. He fixed the broken fence. Cleaned the gutters. Repaired the kitchen cabinet Eleanor always complained about. He never once mentioned money. One afternoon he said quietly, "I don't want the house anymore. I just want my father." And for the first time since Eleanor died, I felt peace. I looked at the empty porch swing beside me and smiled. She had been right. People can be deceived. But family, if given one honest chance, can still find its way back home.